Welcome back to Horizons, Middle East and Africa. I'm Christine Burke in Dubai. Well, a gauge of Asian currencies has hit its lowest in almost 2 decades against the dollar. Meanwhile, Asian stocks have fluctuated as investors grow wary of taking more risk ahead of an incoming Trump presidency. Joining us now is Ryan Lamant, co-founder and CEO of Neovision Wealth Management. Well, Ryan, great to have you with me on set here today. Thanks for coming on and sharing all of your views. Let's first start with the stock markets and equities, because really we've gotten off to somewhat of a weak start for 2025. There was no Santa Claus rally for the S&P 500. Chinese equities don't look very strong either. What is your expectation for where we go from here? Do you see this weakness as indicative of more to come?
Well, let's go back to the last Fed meeting where we had one vote that was against cutting rates, the jobs report, and a few other things. So today, the equities markets are a bit worried that we go back to raising interest rates rather than cutting them. The policies of President Trump are expected to be inflationary, namely on the tariff side, and the deflationary policies are supposed to come a bit later. So this is where there's a lot of uncertainty with these stock markets. So everyone today is in a wait and see until President Trump takes over, and we see exactly how the calendar will pan out.
So is that the biggest driver for 2025? Then that may be a silly question, but is it really all about Trump? What about, going back to the macroeconomic fundamentals and other things like that? I suppose Trump affects it all, though, right?
You see, Christine, that's the thing. And I've been talking about this here on your set for 2 years now. The problem is that in the U.S., everything has been reliant on government spending. You've seen the deficit. You've seen half of the jobs, or 40% of jobs, have been government jobs, social security, education, etc. So the U.S. economy has been very reliant on government spending. And that is why today policymakers, public administration, political leaders are key here on what's the next step for the U.S. Stock markets and the U.S. economy. So this is why there's a wait and see at the moment on what's going to happen. It's much less reliant, as you say, on fundamentals. Look at the U.S. stock markets. We're looking at one stock, basically, NVIDIA.
Yeah.
A U.S. stock market should have 20 NVIDIAs, not one NVIDIA. The U.S. stock market deserves 20 NVIDIAs, not just one. So imagine something goes wrong with NVIDIA.
Oh, well, my goodness. Let's talk about the U.S. consumer then some more, because we know that Trump has plans to try to rein in government spending. U.S. consumers are getting used to, or have gotten used to, elevated interest rates over the past couple of years. What now? How do you see the health of the consumer?
So if we look at a couple of things, first of all, savings rates. Saving rates are below 5%. Would like to see them above 5%, which is the long-term average. We're at 4.4%. Then if you look at the household savings, total savings are $1.2 billion, or hovering around $1 billion. So they've dropped substantially since the pandemic. The second thing is the credit card delinquency rates, or default rates. They're actually quite high. And they've jumped recently to 4.4% and rising. So this is also a concern. So yes, the U.S. consumer has been struggling with inflation. So now if we see more tariffs being imposed, inflation coming back, then yes, the U.S. consumer is a concern.
What do you think the possibility is here that we look into 2025, we try and gauge what we're going to see from the Fed, and that we actually have it completely all wrong and that nothing is going to go according to plan?
Absolutely. So we're taking really extreme cases, having the 10-year yield at 6%, where inflation is back, and on the other hand, the U.S. going into a recession and then having to cut rates much faster. We're looking much more at these barbell scenarios rather than the midsection. And let's not forget, there's also the geopolitical component.
Yeah.
So the geopolitical side, President Trump has been speaking a lot about geopolitics, about actions, etc. So this could also trigger some external exogenous factors that could affect the U.S. economy and the U.S. stock markets.
Well, you mentioned the geopolitics, so of course, let's expand on that and look here in the region. What is front of mind for you as you try to figure out the key themes to play going into this new year? Where do you think we may see potential changes?
So basically, here to talk about the two main markets, Dubai financial markets, and Saudi Arabia, Tadawul. So here we've seen Saudi Arabia lag Dubai. Dubai has been one of the top performers in the world. And this was not the case 15 or 10 years ago. So everyone was wondering, why is Dubai lagging the whole world? And today, no one is wondering that anymore. wondering about Saudi Arabia. So it's actually very simple. One, it's reform. Reform always bears uncertainty, and foreign investors and institutional investors, they don't like uncertainty. And the second is geopolitics. Saudi Arabia is very close geographically to the tensions that are happening from a geopolitical perspective. So yes, this is affecting markets. Most potential, Saudi Arabia, because it has lagged.
That's where I'm based most of the time. Just very, very quickly, where do you see oil playing into all of this and playing into investor sentiment about Saudi markets, for example?
So obviously, higher oil prices are better for Saudi Arabia. If we see geopolitical tensions, then yes, oil will go back to the 80s, and that's actually good for Saudi Arabia, subject to geopolitical, no explosions at least.
All right, Ryan. Well, thanks so much for your time today. It's really great to have you with us. That's Ryan Lamand, co-founder and CEO of Neovision Wealth Management. Well, coming up, top EU officials visit Syria as more regional and global